Have you ever played a game with custom magic like Oblivion and other examples I'm too lazy to look up? Well, to me, the magic's never custom enough. When I think of custom magic, I think of being able to make spells that do whatever I want. Well, a small indie dev company called Tasty Studios apparently had the same idea and made a game called Magicmaker. The game boasts incredibly customizable magic to the point of making it its main gimmick. So, let's start up the game and see how well they did. We start the game looking for a magic related job, so we go to this sorting hat type thing that chooses our magic profession. And we get to be a security guard for a magic school. Yay? I mean, I kind of expected the protagonist of all people to have a slightly cooler job, but whatever. We go and take the aptitude test, and after we pass, we get sent on various busywork missions across the land. Anyway, I'm pretty sure most of you are here for the magic, so let's touch on that in the gameplay overall. The magic is split into 3 categories: wands, spells, and robes. The wand costs no mana but does very little damage as a trade-off. The spells do much more damage, but they actually cost mana. And the robes affect the user with passive effects, rather than being active like the other ones. You start off with one of each, and you eventually gain a second spell slot. I'm going to refer to both spells and wands as spells from here on out to keep things from getting too confusing. You gain materials from doing missions. The materials have different robe and spell effects, and they also have different grades that determine how effective they are. You can also enchant spells to reduce their damage to 0 but increase how much the secondary effects do. And that's really it. Yeah, it's really simple. Of course, it gets a little bit more complicated when you look into the individual effects of the materials themselves, which I won't get into here because I don't want to spoil it for you, but don't let the simplicity of it turn you away. You can still make some really interesting combinations. For instance, I made a flying spell, a teleportation spell, a spell that almost completely stops time for enemies, and I'm sure you can come up with much more as I'm not the most creative person. I really only have 4 major problems with the system. For one, if a spell looks cool, don't assume that means it's powerful. Like here, I made a laser that explodes constantly at contact. Sounds pretty dang deadly, doesn't it? It kind of has a problem destroying a pile of leaves. Like, it eventually does it, but it took way longer than it should have. The second problem I have with the system is on the opposite side of the spectrum. Some spells are a little, kill the final boss in New Game ++++ in about 3 seconds-y. In this type of game, I understand that there needs to be an overpowered spell or two, and I actually enjoy that there is. If you know what you're doing, then you can probably get through this entire game within like an hour and a half. And I love that, but maybe dial it back a bit with how overpowered you can become. My third problem is that after a while, every spell starts feeling the same, which I actually don't really count against the game, as this game is a sandbox, and all sandbox games eventually get dull and feel samey. My last problem is how limited you are with certain types of spells. Do you want to be a summoner? Well, too bad, there's only one summon in the game and it's pretty dang weak. Want to make a spell to buff yourself? Too bad, the only buff you can apply to yourself through spells is an increase to movement speed. I really wish that spells were put into categories like summoning, buffing, debuffing, etc., and that the materials acted differently based on what category spell you're making. To me, it's just disappointing to see that some common types of magic in games are poorly represented here, and I wish they were more fleshed out. Throughout the game, you get permanent upgrades to your spells and robes by getting extra material slots, but if you go into New Game Plus, then these upgrades stack and you can get even more slots. There is a limit to how many slots you can get, but it's still a really good incentive for doing New Game Plus. The game's visuals are really interesting. I personally love the papercraft aesthetic, but I can see it not being for everyone. The only real problem I have with the game visually is that sometimes it's hard to see what's going on. But at the same time, I understand that a game with highly customizable magic will probably have particles flying everywhere. The music isn't anything to write home about, it gets the job done as background music, never anything that blew me away though. I personally don't like the humor most of the time. The entire reoccurring joke of the game is that no one likes you for some reason. And while occasionally it got me to chuckle, it generally just made me feel bad for the protagonist. Especially with the ending, which I'll get to later. Overall, the presentation is meh. It isn't bad per se, but the only real positive thing it has going for it in this department is the papercraft visuals. Though you can customize your character, which is cool. In my case, I made an average high school girl, except for the fact that it's actually a guy and he's a Super Saiyan. Now time to finish up the story. Go to this time if you want to avoid spoilers. During our busy work, we come across someone named Azazel. I probably butchered that name. They're mad about the school not letting goblins in, so they started training goblins to use magic themselves. They end up turning the headmaster into a goblin, and in the final fight both the protagonist and Azazel die. No one ends up caring about the protagonist's death or sacrifice. The headmaster kicks out all the humans and now only teaches goblins. The end. Yup, there's no alternative ending. I understand not every story can end happily, or the stories that do have happy endings will lose all impact. And I do understand that the ending goes with the whole joke of no one liking the protagonists, but I genuinely hate this ending. Everything that you did now means absolutely nothing, and everyone still hates you. I understand that this is mostly just a sandbox game to screw around in, and the story doesn't really matter much in this case, but why does the story have to be so depressing? So, would I recommend Magicmaker? Yeah, I think I would. While some aspects of it aren't amazing, it's still overall a really fun game. The game is $10 on Steam and is worth the money. The game eventually does go stale, but what sandbox game doesn't? I think the only things that this game are really missing is the addition of mod support and multiplayer. If it were to have one or both of these things, then you'd easily be able to get another 5 hours or more out of this game. As for me, I may come back to this game occasionally to screw around with some spells, but I think I'll probably let this game rest for now. Well, killing bosses in seconds was fun and all, but I want to play something where I need to put a little bit more thought into combat. So, next time I'll take a look at One Step from Eden, a roguelike akin to Mega Man Battle Network of all things. See you guys then.